that line number 80, ignoring what is going on under the hood, that's very weird, right? Again, because of whatever reason you need to do something very, 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 very weird that shouldn't happen at all, but if that happens, then it's time to add a proper command, yeah? Because maybe in the Coderi platform I just have 3 commands. It means that tomorrow I need to change that line to something different. Of course, I really understand that command is very important. And I will take my time after changing that line, I will take my time to amend the command. Yeah? But again, this is something exceptional. Any questions? No? All right, so we got commands strategy. Yeah? Also think about the job interview. Companies used to ask that. What do you think about commands? Yeah? Again, this is not rocket science, so all the opinions may be valid, but it's important to defend them. Yeah? Because if you tell me that the command is valid, I will present you this problem, right? The commands easily get out of date, they don't really reflect the business logic, blah, 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 blah. Right, I've seen some of you doing things like that. Right? What do you think about random empty lines? Not good, right? Not good, not good, not good. We should try to avoid that. We should try to avoid adding multiple empty lines. And to be honest, to me, even a simple empty line is wrong. Say again? Screen? It's not working the stream. Okay. Oh. That's weird. All right, let me try to reconnect. Maybe. Right, sorry guys, looks like there was an issue on the stream, so I guess you cannot see anything, right? Can you is YouTube working or not at all?
It's working now.
Okay, it's working now. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's just continue. All right, so where I was, let me go back to my VS Code. Yeah, so we were talking about adding empty lines. I'm not a big fan of adding empty lines. I've seen many people doing things like that. Let A equals 4, let B equals A plus 2, return 2 multiplied by B, things like that, right? Adding random, sort of random break lines in your code. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. Yeah? Some developers, they argue, say, no, but the code gets more readable if you add spaces, right? They're like, you know, when you were like 14, 15 years old, and you had a very messy bedroom, and your mom knocked the door and started shouting, please tidy up, you know, get your clothes sorted, your video games, all the things. And then what you did, because you were trying to do something and then you didn't want to waste your evening just tidying up your room, what did you move the clothes to one corner, you move the books to the other corner, you move the video games, right? So that's not the way you tidy up. So to me, adding a space between your stuff is not the way to tidy up things. Yeah, that's to me an anti-pattern. If eventually your code is complex, because that may happen, right? You may have a function with many things. The solution is not to add random break lines. The solution is to split that function into smaller chunks, into smaller functions. Yeah, that's the way to go. You know that on the Coderi platform, you got the elegance console, right? At the bottom on the right, you've seen that. So this is based on linting. So does anyone know what linting means? Linting is the way we evaluate the quality of your code according to some standards. So talking about JavaScript, we have something called ESLint. So ESLint is like the de facto standard to evaluate the quality of your code. Yeah? So you can define a series of rules. So what is bad code and what is good code? For instance, a good example of bad code. A good example of bad code is typing 20 lines. That's bad code. The functions, the simpler, the better. Another good example of bad code is writing very long lines. Yeah? That's bad code. Have you ever noticed that vertical line? That's a way to tell you if your line goes beyond that limit, that margin, it's time to refactor your code a bit. Yeah? So don't underestimate that vertical line. You can customize it on the settings. I think by default is 80 characters. Here on the Codery platform, I think it's 75. I try to be a bit more restrictive. All right, so that's an example of that code. Also, weird indentation, guys. This is very important. I've seen that many times. Let A equals 5. Let B equals C. Yeah, you get my point, right? That's very confusing. Indentation has a purpose, which is readability. That applies to both JavaScript and HTML. The majority of the rules here apply to every single language. It's nothing about JavaScript. It's about programming good practices, generally speaking. Yeah, so as you can see here, thanks to the indentation, we can get a feeling about how the application is orchestrated. Look what happens if I remove the indentation. It's a bit more complicated to read, right? I hope you agree on that. By the way, with Visual Studio Code, there is a way to indent your HTML code automatically. So you do right click and then you select Format Document. Visual Studio will do its best to indent the code. It fails sometimes. This is a good example. Look, that's clearly wrong, right? That's the point of closing a P tag here. Let's leave it there. But hey, again, it will solve 80% of the problems. Look at the way you indent the code. Whenever you open a tag, it should close at the same indentation level. Yeah? When you open a link, you'll close it at the same indentation level. Yeah? So if you do things like that, that's very weird. Yeah? So generally speaking, we indent code with one tab, at least in JavaScript. And I believe JavaScript is the only popular language where you indent with tabs. Other languages like Python or Java, they prefer to indent with spaces. I never, ever understood that. That's something I need to admit off the record. Because to me, adding one tab is easier and less error prone than 4 spaces, right? Also to navigate. If I want to go to the beginning of the line, yeah. I've been asking that to many Python and Java developers. What the hell do you indent with the spaces? And what they told me is that tab fans like myself don't like to write style guides, right? And that's because at the end, why spaces? Because someone wrote it and everyone adopted that rule, right? Anyway, regardless of whether you use spaces or tabs, you see it's one block right and eventually one block to the left. I know some people, and I never understood, I think this is a joke, but I got the feeling some people think that seriously, that they like to indent following the Fibonacci sequence. Do you know the Fibonacci sequence? Boy, it's Fibonacci sequence. Let me see if I can find an example. Yeah, there was a very nice tweet. If not, I'll send it to you in Slack afterwards. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah. I find this weird, but still, yeah. For some people, that's okay. Right, so we've been talking about indentation, we've been talking about break lines, commands, all these things, right? Let me talk about something a bit more important, not more important, but more critical in the long term. At the moment, all of you are working on the app.js. If you've done task number 7, which is about componentizing components, which is something we'll focus on next week, maybe you started to play with other files, but at the beginning of the bootcamp, you have one file, app.js. As you can imagine, you'll be introducing new features, new stuff, so this file is going to grow a lot. Yeah? Eventually, it doesn't scale to have a very big file. We should create different files for different purposes. Yeah? This will become particularly important at the time we start working together, because we may have conflicts. What happens if we are working on the same product, and I change line number 11? So for instance, I add an exclamation mark, or 3 exclamation marks, and then John, for instance, at the same time is changing that file and is adding 3 dots. We have a conflict. Can you see the problem? We're clashing. Because eventually, which alternative we want to keep? I mean, this example is very silly because we change the same sentence, so I'm sure we can agree which words we want to use, right? But I hope you get the point. That could get a bit more complicated. So the bigger the files are, the more likely you are going to clash with your colleagues. Yeah? That's why we should try to create different files. Let me present you an example. Next week we'll start talking about components. Yeah? So a component, just for reference purposes, is at least on its most basic shape. I know that Sarah has been looking at other more complex components, but let's talk about the basics. So if we could create a component called hello. So a component is essentially a JavaScript function. Yeah? Please be careful, starting with capital. Yeah? So if I type hello world, let's talk about case. Right? Let me do a parenthesis. Let me do a break here. So if I create a variable called let hello world, not sure if we talked about that this week. So does anyone know the name of this case? It is camel case. That's correct. Yeah? That's a technical way to describe it. What happens if we can hear from the PHP world and we do that? This is very popular in PHP, this syntax. What's the name of this case? A snake case. Yeah? It does like the snake, up and down. Correct. And what happens if I go back to camel, but I capitalize it? So the first character is actually capital as well. What's the name of this case? Pascal. It's Pascal, that's correct, Pascal case. Yeah. So when we create a React component, the naming conventions should be based on Pascal. Yeah. And the very last thing, this is not valid in JavaScript. That's all these examples are valid in JavaScript, but this one is not. What happens if I do that? What's the name of this case? It's kebab case. That's correct. Yeah. All the millennials refer to it as kebab case because it looks like the hyphen or the dash is like the blade going through the meat, right? If you are about 45 years old, well, it doesn't apply here, but if you're a very old developer, you'll refer to it not probably as kebab case, but as Lisp case because Lisp was the first programming language to use it, right? Anyway, so when we create a React component, we should use Pascal case. That means every word should be in capital. And now, how a basic React component looks like? It's pretty simple. We just have to return a piece of HTML. Something like that. Yeah? That's the most fundamental component you can create in React. And now the question is, how do we display the hello world message? At the end of the day, we're creating a new HTML tag. You know, in HTML, you got div, you got labels, you got many different tags, images, of course, tables, many things, right? So you can do that. Look, as simple as that. So it will display hello world on the screen. Let's see if that's true. Let's see if that's true. Back to the web browser, and then I'm going to localhost, and then it doesn't work. Some of you have been asking this question this week. Why it doesn't work, guys?
You didn't stop the terminal.
Ah, that's the thing, right? That's the most fundamental thing here. Every day when you come here, start the server. Yeah? I've seen some of you, you go to a terminal, and in the terminal, you go to the project and you type npm start, which is fine. However, I strongly recommend you, talking about good practices, to open an integrated terminal. Yeah, so you go to the menu, you type terminal, new terminal, and then you go to the terminal at the bottom. I find this particularly convenient because if there is any error, if there is any warning, you can quickly catch it. Let's type npm start. And now you'll get a warning. Have a look. Yeah, that will happen as well. Sometimes you want to run multiple React applications in parallel, right? every React application needs support. You know, in the URL localhost colon 3000. That's the space that that application needs. Because I'm running another application, it's asking me, hey, something is already running there. Are you sure you want to open the app? Please type Y. Yes. And it will eventually open a new tab. And in 7 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, and 7. That's it, right? In 7 exact seconds, you get your hello world message, right? All right, so this is about components. You know that you can actually look. This is a good example why I love to have the terminal open already. Because if there is any warning, you'll immediately see the problem. So can anyone tell me what's going on? What that problem is about?
So you're not using, so you've imported like an image, most likely the logo, then you don't go on to use that image in your code, so it's basically flagging a non-use variable.
That's correct, that's correct. We'll talk about imports and exports in a minute, right? But this is like something that you are trying to import, but we are not using it, right? Are we using the logo? Are we displaying the React logo? Not at all, right? Probably you cannot see that because of the quality or the lack of quality of the projector, but line number 2 is grayed out. So if you have the same problem locally, you'll quickly see that visually speaking. Yeah? Grayed out means you are not using something. If you are not using something, then delete it, right? What's the point of having something you are not using? The best code is the one you delete because that part will never fail again. All right, and once you delete that, then you can see it compile successfully. So now it works fine. So we can now reuse the hello world component multiple times. Yeah, so if you do that, you get the hello world message multiple times, right? By the way, have you seen how I did copy that, right? I mean, you can go classic, you can select the line, and then paste, 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 that's fine. But there is a very sexy shortcut in VS Code. For Mac is Option Shift down. You see? I can quickly copy something. And on Windows is, I don't know, Windows Shift down or Control Shift down or something like that. Yeah? So that's the way you can quickly copy stuff. And I'd like to show you how to quickly rename stuff. So imagine that I got a hello world component, but I want to rename it. Of course, you can go one after the other, right? Hello Codery, yeah? And then, but that's error prone. I wouldn't do that because you are likely to forget any of the instances. So don't manually copy and paste all the instances of the token you want to replace. There is a slightly better approach, which is if you select the find dialog, in Windows is Control F, on Mac is Command F. You see that pop up on top? Then if you click on the tiny arrow, you can find and replace. So that's slightly better. So I can say, hey, please, find hello world and replace all the instances of hello world with hello Codery. And now I can replace all the instances by clicking on that button on the right. Pop. Yeah, that's a bit more professional. However, I'd like to tell you how I do it. I never do that. So there is probably my favorite shortcut in Visual Studio Code. So I can select a word. So if I double click on it, and now I can select all the instances of that word. And you can do that with Command D on Mac, and I think it's Control D on Windows. Yeah, you see? I got all the instances of hello world selected. So now, that's pretty cool, right? You can replace them in one go. Any questions? No? Any questions for the guys online? Damiano, Clarissa, Steffi?
No questions at the moment.
Cool, great.
That's fine. No, that's me.
Thank you guys. So in the last 10 minutes, the very last thing, this is actually very important. So we talked before, we've been going up back and forth, right? So this is a bit messy, sorry about that. We said before that eventually your app.js file will grow a lot, and this is completely horrible because of multiple reasons. readability, stability, conflict chances. You know, we should try to avoid that. So, look, we have created a new component, hello codery. Whenever you create a new component, please create a new file. One component, one file. That's the way you can ensure that your files will remain small or relatively small at least. And how do we do that? Look, you need to go to your file explorer and then we can create a new file. Of course, we can create a new folder as well. I'd like to talk about that in a minute. So first of all, let's create a new file. Right click, new file. And the name of the file should match the name of the component. Again, this is just best practices. This is not written anywhere, right? But, well, maybe it's written somewhere, but it's nothing really strong. It's just feelings. So based on these feelings, if my component is called hello codery, my file should be called hello codery.js. You see that? Enter, and now I have an empty file. So look at what can I do. I can cut it, my hello codery component, and I can paste it here without looking at the server. Will it work or not? Why not? That's a good point. That's a good point. Functions in JavaScript are by default private. That means that if I create a function in app.js, I can consume it only in app.js. It's not public. It's not accessible by other files. So how do we solve that? We have to export it. Yeah, we have to export it. And how do we export a file? Well, the easiest way to do is to type export and then default. Yeah? Default means that's the main function of this file. We may have other secondary functions, but this is the main one. Export default and then the name of the function. Will it work now or not? Why not?
Just to import it.
We have to import it. Fantastic, Joshua. We have to import it, yeah? And how do we import it?
You go on APS.
Yep, import, and then the name of the component, hello codery, from, and then the location, right? Correct. To specify the location, look, the hello codery component is on the same folder as app.js. They are neighbors, they are siblings. The way to access a sibling component is by typing /. This has nothing to do with JavaScript, not even with programming. Yeah? If you are a Linux user, if you like to play with the terminal, you deal with these problems all the time. Yeah? /, and then look, I can visually click on the component, and that's it. Do we need to specify the extension of the file?
What's the question?
Do I need to specify the extension .js? In modern JavaScript, let's say this is not necessary. Yeah, it's not necessary. So JavaScript, the system and running under the hood, will do its best to determine the extension of the file. It may be convenient though, if for instance you have multiple files with the same name and different extension. What happens if I have a CSS file with the same name? Which one do we want to import, the JavaScript or the CSS? Yeah? So in some cases it's convenient, but out of the box, it's not necessary. Will it work now? There is no problem.
I mean, if I do,
No, you do it fine. Look, if I do it, .js, that's fine. All right, will it work now? Look, we still have an error. That's very weird the first time you come across that problem. All the import-export logic between app.js and hellocodery.js is sorted, hopefully. However, look at the error. And even though the error is weird, at least thankfully, the message is very satisfying. Look, React must be in the scope when using JSX. So you know that this is JSX. So JSX is the implementation of HTML introduced by React. JSX and HTML are very, very similar. 95% the same. There are some subtle differences. Yeah? So in that particular case, it's telling us that if in a JavaScript file we are using HTML or JSX, we need to import React. Yeah? Because you know that that code is not JavaScript friendly. In a JavaScript file, if you are not using React, you cannot do that. That's not a standard in JavaScript. Because of that, if you want to do that, you need to import React. And then React will know how to deal with it. To import React, we need to import React from React. Does it make sense? Yeah? All right, so once we got that, we got the compile successfully message. So now if we go back to our web app, still works. Any questions? No? All right, go for it.
Where do you export the file to?
Where do you export the file?
Yes.
Where do you export the file? Not sure if I got the question.
Because first you have to, you created a file.
Yeah, here is the file.
Yeah, and then you exported it.
No, you export it first. When you export it, that means that any other file can import it. You're making your file available. You're creating an API. Like this file, the API is one method called hello codery. If any of you needs to use it, the only thing you need to do is to import it.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
When you import a file, you are not using it yet. You are just preparing it. To me, importing a file is like dropping milk in the fridge. Yeah, you know when you go to Tesco and you bring milk, you import it into the fridge. Are you consuming it? Not yet. It's available. If you want, you can use it. But first of all, it should be on the fridge.
I get that bit. It's like, because the step we did first was to export.
Yes, correct. You export it, and then that means that other components can import it.
Okay.
Export, import.
Is there anything you need to type in when you export it?
That export default.
Okay.
Yeah, export default. What happens if I don't export the method? Will it work? No, because now hello codery is a private method. We cannot import it. If we go back to the web browser, look, error, attempting to import error. The message is really good, right? Hello codery does not contain a default export. So we need to make sure that we really do it, right? Export default. Go for it.
Why do we have private functions?
Why do we have private functions? That's a good question. Because if everything was public, it will be a bit difficult to really drill down into the important part of your component. If I have here 20 methods, look, return hello, and then I have function world, return world. So now essentially my component can do something like that, right? So I can do hello and I can do world. So imagine that every method is public. No, sorry, every method is private. That's why it doesn't go, right? I mean, but again, imagine that all the methods are public. In regards to this component, it will be a bit more difficult to really focus on the method that you want to export. These methods are private. I don't want anyone to use them. These are just utilities I'm using internally to build my functionality. But there is no point of enabling these methods for other components unless I explicitly want them to do, right? So that's why methods are private by default. So whenever you want to share, like privacy settings, right? You know, if you have like Google Drive or Amazon Photos or things like that, when you upload the picture, are they public? No. The content is private out of the box. And of course, you can share some bits with your audience, right? So that's the same logic. Right, so export default, let's again make sure it works. By the way, that's another point of good practices. Whenever you introduce a change, even though if it's a small change, then go back to the browser and make sure it works. If you spend 20 minutes of your life dealing with changes and then after that, you go to the browser. First of all, it won't work. I promise it won't work, and then it will be harder to debug the problem. Why it doesn't work? Doesn't it work because of the change number 2 or change number 25?
I mean, the easiest way is just to split the screen.
No, but it doesn't matter. Even if you split the screen, even if you do something like that, what is it? You can split the screen, right? Probably you've seen that in the videos. So you have 2 floating windows. On Windows, you can snap one to the left and one to the right. On Mac OS, you can hold and maximize the green button. Then you drop one on the left, and then you can drop the other one on the right. Yeah. But even if I got that, obviously that works better with a larger screen, right? Even if I have that, if I've been doing 20 changes, then I refresh the browser. How do you know why it doesn't work? It's very hard to determine, right? So you'll need to spend a few minutes going back in time, analyzing your code and see why it doesn't work. However, if you do one change, and you break the app, it's immediate. You know you broke it because of the change you introduced 10 seconds ago. So you know on which line the problem is happening, right? So change, test. That's the approach, yeah? Same thing applies to commit and push. I'll talk about that in 4 minutes. Before going that far, one more thing about import and export. Let me go back to full screen mode because otherwise it's going to be a bit complicated. So look, I got my JavaScript. What happened, and actually I've seen that as well, especially when working with the overlay. I think that's number 5. So I've seen some of you. Imagine that I want to customize the style of my hello codery message. So we can add a class name here, hello, and I've seen many of you going to app.css, and then here, background color blue, right? So if we go back to the browser, it works, it's okay, but that's a bad practice. Why? Look, if we have a new JavaScript component, which is a React component, we should also have a new CSS file. So all your CSS files encapsulate the logic that affect that component. And how do we do that? Well, we can create a new file. Look at the naming conventions. I'm using the same name all the time. Hello, capital H, codery.css. Yeah? You see? And now, if you land on a new project, if you need to change the styles of hello codery.javascript, you can immediately notice that probably the styles are declared on hello codery.css, right? And now it's time to go to the app.css, remove what I did here, remove that, and drop it into hello codery.css. Will it work, first of all? That's a good point. Look.
You need to export it.
Yeah, well, sort of, right, it doesn't work, first of all. And it doesn't work because of the same problem. We need to sort of export, import CSS, right? With JavaScript, we need to do something similar. In CSS, it's a bit different. CSS is public out of the box, right? Everything is public, and that's a bit confusing, but this is the way it works. So if you have noticed in app.javascript, which is this file, look at line number 3. From the JavaScript file, we import the CSS file. So can we do the same thing on hello codery? Can we do import hello codery.css? Yeah, you see? So from the JavaScript, we import the CSS. So that means that the CSS will be loaded into your web browser. Oh, I did something wrong. It's /, sorry, because it's on the same folder. Yeah, / hello codery.css. And if we refresh, it's still hanging, so it's taking some time, but hopefully, eventually, that will work. Let me open a new tab. No, here you go, it's working. It's very slow. Very slow. Let's try again. Oh yeah, my laptop is dying. I got that feeling, but anyway, it's there, right? It works. So that's the way you should deal. If you create a new React component, first of all, create a new JavaScript, create a new CSS, and then import these resources. Few more things here. This is important, guys. You've seen that, right? Hello codery.css, hello codery.javascript. To me, the root class of the component should be what? The same. Hello codery. Yeah? That will help you in the future. As soon as the CSS becomes more complicated, that will help you. Yeah? That's the way we namespace CSS property. We'll talk about that in the future. But for now, try to stick to this pattern. And the very last thing about import-export. Whenever you have that, you have multiple files. For every component, you have at least 2 files, the JavaScript and the CSS. You may have images, you may have videos, whatever, but at least you have JavaScript and CSS. I like to create folders as well, yeah? Because otherwise, eventually, you have 1,000 files in your source folder. That's a bit too much, right? So I like to follow a hierarchical sequence of folders. And how do we do that? Again, right-click, new folder, and I'll call the same name, Hello Codery. You see the consistency on the naming conventions, right? Hello Codery, and then I move my JavaScript and my CSS file inside. You see? So now I got all my Hello Codery resources encapsulated in a folder. Will it work now or not? Why not? That's correct. Look, is line number 2 correct at all? Is the hellocodery.js file a sibling of app.js? Not at all. We've moved files a bit, right? So now we need to find the location of that file. Let's start from the beginning. /. Oh, that's pretty good, right? That visual way of navigating through your folder system is pretty convenient. Hello Codery / Hello Codery. And now, hopefully, it will work. Why the CSS still works, guys? It works because the CSS is still a sibling of the JavaScript. Yeah? They are still on the same folder. That's why it works. Any questions?
Yeah. So let's say you have a query.
Yeah.
Query.
Yeah.
You have an image inside the query.
Yeah.
And in the CSS, you edited the image. So image width was 100% or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have another one which says hello world.
Yeah.
And it has a CSS as well. You have an image. And then you do the same image with different. Would it work? Or?
That's why you got app.css. So app.css, which is your root CSS file, here you can set up your globals. So for instance, if you want all your titles to be in red color, you can create a global class here. Look, this is a good example, right? This comes with React. So React says, hey, in this application, every link with class name AppLink should have that color, yeah? So in here you can set up your global styles. But if a style is particular to any component, then you should drop the style not on app.css, but on the particular CSS.
But you would use it during a class, not like image.
No, with a class.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to use classes as much as possible, guys. Anything else? Yeah?
Probably a stupid question. You know you created that last file,
Last file, yeah?
okay?
Yeah?
You imported it,
Yes?
but you didn't export it.
You mean the CSS or the JavaScript?
The last one you created, the folder.
I only creating one JavaScript file, which is hello codery, and that file exports one method. With JavaScript, you need to export and import. With CSS, you don't export anything. You cannot. It's not supported by the language. You cannot do that. Export, no, it doesn't work, right?
With CSS too.
No. With CSS, you just declare your CSS, and then you still have to import it. How do you import it? Like that. Oops, sorry. Line number 2.
Okay.
Yeah. You import the CSS, so that means that it will be rendered. Question?
Do you have to import the CSS you did
In the main file? No. No. That would be a problem. If I had to import all my CSS files here on the main app.javascript, eventually I'll have 1 million imports, right? This is not hierarchical, doesn't scale. So from app.js, you import pretty much nothing, only the root components. And then it's the responsibility of each component to decide which CSS file is associated to it.
But they're all associated to that root app.css.
Say again?
But the app.css will still work for them.
Yeah, because the CSS styles, as we mentioned before, are global. So that's why you should be a bit more careful the way you declare your CSS styles. We'll do another workshop about name spacing. This is very, very important. You remember what we mentioned, I think, on Wednesday about specificity? That's less important. Yeah? So we'll see how to avoid, how to prevent from using it by adding namespaces. Yeah? But this is the future session. I don't want to mix many things here. One more thing, guys. So you've been doing a bit of coding, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about commit and push. Commit and push. So I believe everyone is using the visual, the graphic user interface, right, to do commit and push, yeah? So, this is important, guys. Be careful with your messages. Try to be descriptive, yeah? So, what do you think about messages like solve or problem solve, right? That's means nothing. Means nothing. Don't forget you are going to collaborate with many colleagues. At some point, you are going to share your code to your colleagues, and the first thing they will see is problem solve. Problem solve about what? They may have no idea about what you've been working, right? Yeah, project done. Yeah. Now, try to be as much descriptive as possible. And so then, how you do that? Try to describe the problem. Things like added a new component to welcome users to the platform, something like that, right? More or less. Try to be as much descriptive as possible. It's not about writing 20 paragraphs, but it's about describing the problem. And also, something that people tend to ignore. I will massively, massively recommend you, please, at the end of your commit message, whatever it is, do that. Hash and the ID of the task. Will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. The GitHub ID. Why? Because if you do that, that's a GitHub trick. When you go to the description of the task, you can see how many commits you've done associated to that task. Yeah? So it's a very good way to track the progress associated to that task. Yeah? It doesn't need to be at the end. It could be at the beginning. It doesn't really matter. Anywhere in the text. I like to drop it at the end, but you can put it at the beginning if you prefer. Cool. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it, guys. Do you have any questions? Yeah. No questions are stupid, guys. Don't say that.
I said
Simple. Sorry, I heard.
earlier when you were talking about the JavaScript, like the indenting standards.
Yep.
You had one where it was like a open, like the A, the hyperlink, and then there was a whole bunch of like class names. I just wasn't sure where the closing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually a good question. Look, so generally speaking, maybe you have a link, right? HTML link for now. So you do A, href, HTTP, and then you have a target because you want to open it in a new tab, and then you have a class name, right? And then you have even an ID because of whatever reason. Many different properties, right? And then, of course, you have the link. Right? It means you got something like that. Obviously, from a good practices point of view, that's bad, right? That's bad. I don't want to do any scrolling, so my code should be readable like that, without having to do horizontal scrolling. So when that happens, we can separate attributes. So this is an attribute, right? So we can separate attributes across different lines. So we can do that. 1 attribute, 2 attributes, 3 attributes, 4 attributes. Yeah? And now you can do that. I hope you agree this is better, right? Because I can see all the properties, all the attributes of my link in one screenshot, right? In one go. And then, so your questions arise. I know some developers, I'm not very opinionated here. You see the closing tag, right? Generally speaking, I used to drop the closing tag at the end, but some developers, they like to do that. That's why it looks so weird. And if you do that, now you can do that. Which one, how do you prefer to close tags? Like that? I mean, again, to me, this is very personal. I'm not very opinionated. Yes, whatever you prefer. Yeah. But if when you see something like that, it's because the tag has multiple attributes, and then the developer wanted to clearly. Again, these are good practices. It will work either way. Even if I do that, it will work, right? But trying to improve the readability of your code, the developer say, "Hey, I'm closing the tag because I got many things here." So you see, the tag opens here, the tag closes there. Fair enough. Not against it. Eh? I prefer to do that, but again, up to you. Anything else?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the difference between push and commit with Git?
What's the difference between push and commit? And that's a really good question. So when we do a commit, you know, you can do commit by clicking on the, you cannot see that, by the way, but there's a tick button on top, right? That's probably what you've been doing this week. So when you commit, you are, to simplify things, you're copying all your changes to your local database. Yeah? So Git, I'm oversimplifying things, right? Obviously. You can think about Git like a database. So you have a local Git, local database, and a remote Git on GitHub, the cloud database. So when you commit, you are persisting your changes into the Git local database. Yeah? But again, still local. So that means that if you've been working for 1 week, you commit the changes, and you are so happy that you smash your laptop against the floor, you've lost everything, right? So committing is not enough to persist your changes. It's the first step, but it's not enough. Once your changes are copied to the local database, that's the local database, right? Actually, it looks like the icon of a database. So once your changes are here, push will upload them to your remote database in the cloud, and then you are safe. Then you can safely smash your laptop against the floor, right? Commit and push. But push will only take whatever is here. So what happens if you forget to commit? You are working and then you push. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen because the local database is empty. It's empty. Git will tell you nothing to push. Yeah? You commit, you drop some files here, you push, you upload the files to GitHub. Okay? Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So we are writing some component and we
Yep.
need the size to create another component, small one.
Yeah.
So this is abstraction.
Yeah.
This is abstraction.
Yeah, that's abstraction. Yeah. So when we, again, you remember at the beginning of the session, we said if you have many lines in a function, that's considered a bad pattern. We should move some of the logic to a new file, to a new function. This is abstraction, right? Because we're encapsulating part of your code into a new function. Anything else? Damiano, Clarissa, Steffi, anything else? No? Lisa, actually, Lisa's also there. Sorry about that. Cool. Lisa, you're still alive? Haven't heard you in a while.
No, she sent us back. It was a really good thing.
Okay.
On the
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. All right, so that was it. Workshop is on YouTube. Thank you.